Salutations, one and all, and welcome to RWBY Recapped. Episode 8 of Volume 9 has been released, and this one's actually something special, so let's break down what happened. Know that there are spoilers ahead, so go watch the episode first. We begin with RWBY running aimlessly through the paper acre. She has no destination, she's just running. That is something people in grief or pain will do. They'll just pick a direction at random and go. I did something similar when my golden retriever died, just driving aimlessly around. Eventually though, she collapses at the base of a tree, and Little actually speaks for more than just a short quip. Honestly, I forgot that Little was a character. Little's had such little impact up to this point that I didn't remember this was a character. But Little says that they can go back and that he can guide RWBY. I have to question where Little's been in this place. The Red Prince's acre was directly next to yours, and you'd never been there. But you know how to get around this one. Not impossible, just odd. RWBY is having none of it, though. She says as follows: I promised to serve Atlas as a huntress, that I'd keep people safe, that I'd be there for my friends. Well, let's have a look at that, shall we? You did those things. You did serve Atlas as a huntress. You did the assignments that Ironwood gave you. The only thing that was questionable on your part was not telling him about Salem's immortality. But Crow, who knew Ironwood for years, pressured you that he wasn't trustworthy. Maybe you could have told him later, but Salem showing up personally was unprecedented. Nobody could have anticipated that. Yang and Blake were the ones who talked to Robin and set him off, not you. Then you got the people of Atlas and Mantle away from Salem and her Grimm. They went from certain death to likely death, yes, but given those two circumstances, that one is infinitely better. Finally, you have always been there for your friends. It was Yang and Ren that left you last volume, with Jean keeping an eye on them. In what instance did you abandon or betray your friends? Now, I know that this is survivor's guilt coming into play. RWBY blames herself for what's happened. Many people who survive traumatic events do. They blame themselves because someone else died and they didn't. It's not always logical, but it is a known condition. Many times the survivor couldn't have done anything better, but they'll still blame themselves. PTSD has some similarities to this. She then screams at Little to leave, saying that if you stay with me, you'll end up dead too. If this is in reference to Penny or Pyrrha, then you had no part in their deaths. Pyrrha heroically chose to fight Cinder, and you were fighting as well, on the other side of Vale. You physically couldn't have done anything. Penny's first death was the result of Cinder and Emerald. Again, you couldn't have done anything about that. As for Penny's second death, you'd already been flung into the void. Again, you were not in a position to do anything about that. So RWBY continues to wander off aimlessly, leaving Little. She crosses into the acre where Neo landed, as evidenced by the bridge that she crosses, and the little scenery we can glimpse. The camera does some artsy stuff with RWBY being depicted in a spotlight, so we can't see a lot of the environment. But RWBY arrives at a strange mansion house, and decides to enter for some reason. Inside, she sees paintings depicting Neo's past, and I really need to get around to reading that book about her. But one of the paintings moves, and Roman speaks directly to RWBY, stepping out of the painting. I believe he has a different voice actor, but don't quote me on that. I don't keep up with these things. The new one sounds slightly different, but he does an incredible job at matching Roman's speech patterns and cadence. But we're not done with the weirdness yet, folks. More of the room that RWBY's in lights up, and at the table is seated Penny, Pyrrha, Lionheart, Ironwood, Clover, and Ozpin. I don't usually get unnerved by stuff like this, but I have to give it to the animators and voice actors. They speak to RWBY in a way that is similar to their original characters, but just ever so slightly exaggerated and menacing. And hearing my favorite character that died 8 years ago speak again was not what I expected when I woke up today, but here we are. But this does indicate that Neo must have gotten some sort of mind-reading powers from this place. Either that, or this is an oversight. Neo couldn't know about Clover, and Lionheart's presence is also something that she wasn't there for. But then RWBY says, You still blame me for what happened to Torchwick? Well, yeah, I figured that would be pretty obvious. Your last interaction with her before Atlas was you fighting her and her boyfriend, which resulted in his death, even though it was at the beak of a Grimm, but that's largely inconsequential. Vengeance isn't always logical, especially when it involves a loved one. People can do some seriously heinous things when something happens to somebody that they care about. That's the entire premise of the first John Wick movie. He loved his wife, and he loved his dog. His wife died, but she had gotten him a dog before she did. Someone kills his dog, and thus we get the movie. Roman, however, presents a leaf from the tree to Ruby, and says that Ruby doesn't need to die. Neo wants her to be broken down and destroyed by the tree. I have to question how Neo knows what the tree does. She hasn't had a guide like Jean or the cat, so how does she have this information? She then shows herself, and the illusions begin to attack Ruby. We cut back to the others, however, who are searching for Ruby. Weiss brings up that Ruby was always the one to keep their spirits up, and was the one to keep them going, but they seldom thought about it. Remember to check in on your friends and family, everyone. Yang then says, "It's not like we're asking her to be perfect." Correct. You weren't, but she was. It's something many people in leadership or creative positions struggle with. You can end up setting impossible expectations for yourself, then beating yourself up when you don't reach them. Remember, only you can see all the times you mess up or come up short. Only you can beat yourself up about it. I've spoken to many people who torment themselves this way, but when you stop to think that most people don't know or care about when you failed, then you'll feel much better. It also doesn't help Ruby that she and her friends are put in a cataclysmic level threat that we don't have in our reality, and that she's incredibly young, so she hasn't fully matured enough to deal with this. Even someone who had would have to work to keep their cool when faced with Salem. But unfortunately for her and the rest of the main cast, they don't have the choice. This isn't a matter of your boss being a jerk and you questioning if you should find a new job. Salem won't give up. Ever. That means that you don't really get to stop and deal with your emotions. You have to take care of that on the fly. I know it sucks, but that's the reality of the situation you're in. You don't get to look for a place where you can just hide from Salem. Living in Ever After isn't an option for anyone without the staff of creation, and even if it was, this place has horrors that nobody should be subjected to, like being thrown through time, beings that can shrink you on a whim, or trees that do who knows what. But it cuts back to the illusions attacking Ruby, and the lines they say are remarkably personal, indicating that Neo must have some kind of mind-reading ability. Seeing Pyrrha rendered in the new engine was interesting, but unfortunately it's just an illusory puppet, which makes the Dual-Wielder angry. Ironwood's illusion then inquires, "And yet with all your best intentions, have you ever stopped to wonder if you've done more harm than good?" Again, let's dissect this. Ruby wounded Cinder and froze the Wyvern at the end of Season 3, preventing both from doing further harm. The Wyvern much more so than Cinder. Ruby and the others got the Relic of Knowledge away from the treasonous Lionheart and kept it out of Salem's hands for quite some time. Granted, it should have been kept in Atlas's vault, or at least somewhere where it could be given the highest level of security if they couldn't wheel Freya down there, but it is what it is. Then they got countless innocent civilians away from the certain destruction of Atlas. So yeah, we can confidently say that the cast have done more good than harm. Are they perfect? No. But had they not done what they've done, then things would be much worse. But Ruby finally attacks the Ozpin illusion as it beats her, and it turns into Oscar as she does so. This is clearly just Neo toying with her, but Ruby's already deteriorated emotional state doesn't do her any favors. I get it. You like Oscar, and Neo's showing you some dark stuff. But this isn't Oscar. You know this. It's like in zombie movies where someone can't shoot the person that they knew after said person becomes a zombie. That isn't them. Blast away. Neo then offers Ruby tea with the tree's leaf in it, implying that this is sufficient for the whole remaking thing that it does. I once again question how Neo knows about this, but we have no concrete answers on that front. But the cat returns, blasting Neo through the wall. But if you thought that the cat was a good guy, then you're sadly mistaken. He jams his hand straight into Ruby's chest and says some intriguing things. Firstly, he offers to be her. His purpose with this is vague, but he declares that it's because of his curiosity, but also because he needs to know why his makers left him here. Now, who could they be? Given that he said makers and not maker, that tells us that this is more than one being. Maker also implies that he was constructed and not given life through natural means. He also says that he was left here. Maybe he was somewhere else originally, or maybe they departed without him, but who could he be speaking of? Well, the first thought are that the gods created him. They would fit the bill, as they are indeed two of them, and the god of light referred to Remnant as an experiment. It wouldn't be unlikely of them to have thrown this nightmare place together on a whim. He then begins to say, only to leave and make all of, before he's cut off, implying something greater. Maybe he was about to say Remnant. That would mean that he predates Salem, the relics, and everything else. But Little actually contributes something for the first time since episode 2. Little bites the cat's tail, distracting him. But Little's batted aside, and Neo returns, attacking the cat. She swats him away, then stomps Little. I'm sure that there are plenty of individuals who would pay for that service. The rest of the cast arrive, but for some reason, they just watch Ruby drink the tea. They see her, and she sees them. The shot even lingers on them looking at each other, but they make no move to stop her. Why? But Ruby is then taken into the ground like the herbalist was, and what happens, we can't say for now. The cat recovers and screams that he needed her. Why? What made specifically Ruby different from the others? But Neo's illusions have vanished, and Roman's voice speaks to her, saying that they could take over ever after. Neo seems distraught, and the show implies that she doesn't know what to do now that she's gotten vengeance. This is a message that I've never understood. Vengeance is often portrayed as a bad thing, but then I have to question what the justice system is if not vengeance of a sort. If someone commits murder, no matter if you believe they should be imprisoned or put to death, something must be done to ensure that they don't commit further murders. That is vengeance for the one who was murdered. But apparently this is sufficient for the cat, who dives straight into Neo's mouth with a genuinely unsettling expression on her face. I honestly said ugh at this. Jean tries to save her, but isn't quick enough. The cat distorts some of her features and then leaves. And on that note, the episode ends. Admittedly, I haven't been much of a fan of this season, but this episode finally had some real progression. I do find that it was forced how the rest of Team RWBY and Jean didn't do anything to stop Ruby from drinking the tea, but it is what it is. The season was just sitting on Ruby being agitated for so long without doing anything about it, that it's great to see some real progress on that front. But now Ruby is separated from the rest, by means which we don't fully understand, and Neo has received punishment that I would personally deem to be beyond her crimes. She's done some horrid stuff, but I'd rather have just put Crescent Rose through her and been done. Nothing that lives deserves to be possessed like that. So we have 2 episodes remaining. I'm eager to see where this goes. But these are just my observations. What are yours? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and leave a like if you're so inclined. And subscribe to see more. And may you all have a weapon in each hand.